That would be a call to order, and that is at 8:34 in the morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We are going to start off, as usual, on the prayer and the pledge, and Brian is going to lead us in prayer today.
Bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come before you and we just ask, Lord, for wisdom for everyone here making a decision, Lord, for this council, that you just give them supernatural wisdom, Lord, and help us to remember to be thankful for everything we have during this time of season, Lord, everything that you've provided for us, just all the divine providence and everything that we see from day to day, Lord. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
We are also going to do the pledge next, and I'm going to ask Tommy Hebert to please lead us in the prayer and in the pledges today, if you would, please, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Russell, are you here this morning? Would you come forward, please? I know you're shy, and I know you don't like to be in public, but you're on today. City Engineer Russell Pell has been honored by the San Angelo Standard-Times as one of its 20 under 40 young leaders for 2017. To those of us who work with Russell, this is no surprise. His job involves tending to hundreds of millions of dollars of municipal infrastructure. He is also a point person for millions more in proposed upgrades to streets, water, and sewer lines, as well as storm damage. That's a daunting responsibility, but Russell approaches these duties as he does life, solidly, steadily, and with much integrity. Away from work, he continues to contribute to our community. Russell is a deacon and a Sunday school teacher at Southland Baptist Church. He is also a volunteer and board member with Helping Hands, the organization formerly known as Christmas in April that helps the elderly with home volunteers they can't do themselves. As Russell said during his 20 under 40 interview, anybody can be a boss, but it takes a servant to become a leader. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud Russell Pell for his achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community.
Just kidding with you.
We really made him panic. Mason Matthews, are you here today? San Angelo Fire Department firefighter Mason Matthews has been honored by the San Angelo Standard-Times as one of its 20 under 40 young leaders for 2017. That's because Mason is a yes man. Whether Mason is asked to lead the fire department's Fill the Boot campaign or to spearhead San Angelo hosting the Texas Firefighter Games, or to spend his days off leading Reagan County's fire department and emergency medical service, the answer is always yes. Mason has, pun intended, a fire for his profession. He has earned 12 certifications and is sought statewide to teach and train his peers. He is at the top of the command chain in Big Lake and near the bottom in San Angelo. That exemplifies his ethic of leading not from the front or the back, but from where one is. Lead where you are and be willing to serve, he says. Aside from his professional responsibilities, Mason has been an active volunteer with our area's youth, whether that's mentoring, teaching, or coaching them in classrooms or on ball fields. In all capacities, Mason says he tries to treat people with empathy and respect. If you do that, he says, nothing really becomes routine. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud Mason Matthews for his achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community. Sign that, please. Is Christina Woodard here today? Christina Woodard has been honored by the San Angelo Standard-Times as one of its 20 under 40 young leaders for 2017. That's a tribute to Christina's unbridled enthusiasm for San Angelo. Though she has been here only about 4 years, she is one of our community's top cheerleaders, always touting San Angelo's many charms. A paralegal at Elkins Law Firm, she founded the San Angelo Professional Paralegal Association to provide her peers with educational opportunities. She also is president of the local chapter of the Texas X's, the University of Texas Alumni Group. That follows a long record of service and leadership as a student on the UT campus, and she is the vice president of the Young Professionals of San Angelo and a member of the city's Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Saying she cannot be involved, Christina raves about how San Angelo has embraced her passion for public service. Here's a direct quote. In San Angelo, these people engage you. So you get on these boards, you should be prepared to work. They want to hear what you have to talk about, and they want to take you and help you have a dynamic presence in the town. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud Christina Woodard for her achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community. Sign it for you real quick. Leaf Luger, are you here today? Two 2017 marks the 24th anniversary of the annual City of San Angelo Concho Christmas celebration. The celebration, with over 3 million lights, is one of the largest Christmas lighting events in the state of Texas. The event offers a 2.5 mile walking or driving tour beginning behind the Main Street office and post office on the corner of Abe Street and First Street and ending at El Paseo de San Angelo. Those involved consist of hundreds of volunteers, including inmates from the Department of Corrections, who assist with installation of Christmas scenes, the San Angelo Restaurant Association, who supply food to the inmates, and RSVP volunteers who deliver the inmates' food. The community Christmas tree lighting ceremony will be held Saturday, December 2nd of 2017 at 5:15 p.m. at the corner of South Chadbourn and West Concho Avenue. Activities will include the San Angelo Community Band, conducted by Dr. Constance Kelly of Angelo State University, and the Twin Mountain Tonesmen, directed by Mark Clark. The community tree lighting will be followed by the 16th Annual Lights of Christmas Parade at 6 p.m., which may be viewed on 2nd Street between Oaks and Chadbourn, on Chadbourn between 2nd Street and Concho, on Concho between Chadbourn and Oaks, on Oaks back to 2nd Street. The tour of lights can be seen Sunday through Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. and each Friday and Saturday from 6 p.m. to 12 midnight, December 1st through December 31st, 2017. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, I do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 2nd of 2017 as Concho Christmas Celebration Day, and encourage citizens to join the activities and view the magnificent holiday lights that have become a community treasure.
I just want to thank the City Council for recognizing the more than 400 community volunteers that for these 24 years has made Concho Christmas possible to our community to enhance the holiday season for all of us here in San Angelo.
Is anyone here from the Hazel Dooley family? Okay. Hazel McCoy moved to San Angelo to become the home demonstration agent for Tom Green County on September 1st, 1942. Her office was on the first floor of the county courthouse. Her main objective was to help women of the county to produce and save food, clothing, and shelter. Many women at the time grew Victoria gardens to help with food needs during the war years. She also served on the board for Tom Green County, but she would certainly never tell anyone because she was making the decision to select men for active duty to fight in the war. She is a true pioneer in every sense of the word. She graduated from John Tarleton Agricultural College, now Tarleton State University, in 1938, the University of Texas in 1942, a time when women rarely attended college. She married Roscoe B. Dooley in 1948 and stayed at home to rear her 2 children. After her youngest graduated from Central High School in 1971, she returned to work as an extension agent heading up the Expanded Nutrition Program, a federal government program whereby she took all donated foods distributed by the welfare program at the time and created nutritious foods families could prepare. At the time, the majority of the foods picked up at the food distribution centers was flour, lard, and beans. Her recipes encouraged healthy eating for all. She has been very active in volunteer work and, in fact, doing with her husband, R.B. Dooley, they actually began the Meals on Wheels program, which is now known as Meals for the Elderly. She has funded several endowed scholarships at Angelo State University as well as Texas A&M University. In 2002, she was named an honorary alumni of ASU. Although her 100th birthday will be November 28, 2017, the family will be hosting a birthday celebration for her on Saturday afternoon, November 25, 2017, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at First Christian Church, 29 North Oaks in San Angelo. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 28, 2017 as Hazel M. Dooley Day. Just 2 more. Brian Groves and Brandon Whitford, please come forward. Okay, good, thank you. San Angelo is now the home of an Emmy Award. On November 11th, city videographer Brian Groves and Angelo State University multimedia specialist Brandon Whitford won the iconic statue for producing Shattered Dreams, a dramatic video telling of the fatal consequences of teenage drinking and driving. Groves and Whitford, with a number of local partners, to create a full immersion visual experience. Their 12-minute video, coupled with a live element, promoted responsible decision-making among high school students regarding underage drinking and impaired driving. It did so by showing teens how irresponsible choices can end the dreams of young people and of others. The video was one of 6 finalists in the Lone Star Emmy Awards in a category that honored television works related to special programming for teens. The statewide award recognizes excellence in the TV industry. Shattered Dreams also won the Kurt Uglin Programming Impact Award from the Texas Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors as the video that most influenced perceptions by touching hearts and minds. It was the 2nd straight year the city's Public Information Office won the state award. Shattered Dreams can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and on SATV. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud Brian Groves and Brandon Whitford for their achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community. Let me get in between you, and then I'll sign it. Come on, guys, cuddle up. Either one of you like to speak? Perfect. You're on.
You'll notice the excitement hasn't worn off because we still take them with us wherever we go. This has been an incredible experience, one that we both have just been, it kind of fails to bring words up. I think one of the more incredible things with this project is that it was a community project that it involved so many different organizations, both hospitals, all sorts of different law enforcement agencies, the city, ASU, and a number of other organizations. And it just shows that, you know, when the community can come together, you know, great things can happen. And hopefully a project like this can hopefully save some lives and keep some of our young people from making some bad decisions. So thank you.
At this point, we would like to make sure that everyone has turned their cell phones off, including me. I've checked mine, so I'm good. We'll have public comment at this point. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have anybody here to speak public comment today? Steve?
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. My name is Steve Hampton. I'm here because of, well, let me start at the beginning here. Tax reductions are now in the news again. And they're done to stimulate the economy and to camouflage other legislation that they don't want people to see, I think. Also, concern about spending is increasing on my mind. I know that many of you have made campaign promises or would like to reduce the spending and the overall budget, and yet I see that you have all locked in your votes on raising our expenses. These are emergencies. I know that many of them are very important, and yet there will always be emergencies. No matter how long you're on the council, you're going to see it over and over again. It's a reoccurring theme. So the hard part of fulfilling your elected duty is often thought to you. You have to make the hard decision and to spend for something. I propose that the hard decision is to not spend, to hold. You are spending on the before the curve instead of after. You should be spending off a budget that is where you have stored funds instead of spending before you receive them. This is there are many clubs here in the community that start their meetings by saying that they appreciate small government and family values, and I wish you to remember that. And that is all I have to say at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Bob?
Morning, Mayor, Council. Bob Solis, Director of Neighborhood Family Services. I want Council to know that we have some ASU students here today with us. Please. They're taking a government class, and they're here to witness local government in action. And I would love to say that they volunteered because of the thirst for knowledge, but it could be because they're getting extra credit. I don't know. So, and I think at least one wants to speak. So.
Please start by stating your name, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Council, Mayor, and City Manager. My name is Andrew Russell. While I am a student here at ASU, I come forth today as a previous cadet in the Explorers Post program. The Explorers Post program was initially designed by the Boy Scouts of America and allows students aged 14 to 20 to train and learn with local law enforcement, fire departments, and paramedics. Now, one of the initial functions of the Explorers Post program was an advanced recruitment and training tool for these institutions. It can be much more for the entire community. When I was in Explorers Post 1101, we did more than learn just about law enforcement. We were trained in skills that are no longer taught well in public schools, such as integrity, discipline, service, sacrifice, commitment, and much more. Through us and countless hours of community service, we were able to bring these back into the community where they were once lacking. And within a year, we saw more community involvement, activities, and overall connections than had ever been in that community before. We also saw troubled families come back together and troubled students get set back on the right path. Now, I know San Angelo is a great community, but no matter how great our community is today, we need to focus on the growth and well-being of the community that comes after us. And much of this community is going to be comprised of local students and is still going to be watched over by the law enforcement, fire departments, and paramedics here in San Angelo. I believe the Explorers Post program can help initiate and keep the values our community needs to keep going for the generations to come. There's already been great successes all across Texas. You can look at Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Harris County, Kendall County, Longview, Rockwall, Lubbock, Midland, and the list goes on. Many places already have these programs. So I believe it's time that we catch up with these other growing communities, and I believe it's time that we invest in the Explorers Post program ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, would you like to come forward?
My name is Kyle Shopper, and I have a topic that has been growing on my mind and some of my neighbors that I have discussed with, the idea of reclaimed wastewater going into the tap system. At first, it's kind of the gross factor is overwhelming. Most people want to pass on it because they simply think it's a gross idea. However, after talking with some of the neighbors on my street, some of the people that I know around town, they've all kind of agreed that if some sort of pamphlet or flyer, something that described the safety precautions taken to make sure that there is no chance of contamination, that there's no chance that some STD is going to come through the water source and contaminate their families, they said they would feel a lot more comfortable with it. And so I'm here to propose that there be some sort of citywide pamphlet or flyer made that just ensures the securities of non-contamination of that water if it should go into the tap system. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment? All right. I have three things I want to just discuss before we go into consent agenda, and they're basically housekeeping issues as it relates to the way we will conduct our city council meetings. Number one, you need to be acknowledged before you speak. Number two, we are all elected by the citizens of San Angelo, so each of us should respect each other's opinions. We should not be rolling our eyes or smirking when a vote is taken if the vote didn't go your way. We are here to represent the citizens and not to put one council member against the other. And two, to be very careful when we leave our city council meetings and use the restrooms or other facilities that we keep our conversations relative to the city council meeting and items discussed out of the restrooms. You never know who's going to be in there, and too often things are said that other people pick up on. So I ask everybody's support on those three items. We will now move into the consent agenda. Do I have any items that you want to have pulled from the consent agenda and moved into the regular agenda? Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom? Harry?
Nothing.
Billy?
Nothing.
Lane?
Nothing.
Okay.
Move approval.
A sec. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0 for all consent agenda items. 7-0, did I say 6-0? I didn't count myself. I do count. 7-0. On a regular agenda, what we'd like to do today is to move up on the agenda items E, H, and I, if we could. Are those the ones that? H, I, D, and E, hide. Okay, so just G and H. I'll correct myself for the third time. Okay,
E2, you've got about half a dozen people.
well, we're
sitting
going
right.
to, but we're doing this
Oh.
first. Allison?
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Thank you for accommodating me. I'm a little under the weather today.
Mayor, we need to read the caption.
Sorry. E? I'm sorry, which one are you doing, H? G, second reading and public hearing and adoption of an ordinance amending Appendix A, Article A8.000, utility-related fees, A8008, water, sewer, and trash deposits by amending the deposits. Allison, you are on.
Thank you. This is a similar presentation that y'all saw last time for the first reading, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to stop me. And if you can't understand me, please let me know. I'm a little congested. So right here, I want to go over and start with our current deposits that we charge. As I mentioned last time, the bulk of our customers, both residential and commercial, are in this 5/8 inch category. So I'm going to focus primarily on those for this presentation, but we are amending all the deposits. These are the larger size meters. The slide previously was the smaller ones. And so briefly, I want to go through what the deposits are. A guarantee for the utility. Thank you. So the utility provides services to customers prior to them being issued a bill. This is a guarantee, or a deposit is a guarantee, so if that customer walks that bill, we do receive some of our funds back. It is returned at the 4-year mark, or if that customer closes their account prior to those 4 years. And they are used to cover the last bill or the final bill of that with that outstanding balance. I wanted to make sure that we discuss that the increased deposits are not going to affect the current amount in collections. What we're trying to do is minimize the amount going to our collection agency from here on out. And so this slide is just showing that we send an average just shy of $500,000, approximately 1,500 accounts to collections each year. So the increased deposits will not affect these old collection accounts, but hope to decrease those in the future. And so who does this affect? It affects new customers only, and this ordinance change will go into effect January 1, and so this will not affect our current 35,000 customers. I want to make sure that we send that message. And they do not create revenue for the city. Deposits are put into an account separated from revenue, and they are used for when the 4-year mark comes for that customer, or when the customer closes that account, and then it's applied to the bill. And we have on average 5,900 customers that close their account each year. So what are we proposing? Still the same numbers as last time in the 5/8 inch category. This is for residential customers. We are going from a $35 deposit to a $100 deposit, and I'll go to that calculation one more time here in a second. But we are trying to recoup an average 1 month's bill for the deposit. These are the commercial deposits. So for the 5/8 inch, we're going from a $75 deposit to $160. And then the commercial, these are the larger sizes, and these are used few and far between, and these would be very large businesses coming into the city that would use these meter sizes. So this is just a recap of how we calculate that deposit amount, and so we've used the base fees, trash fee, a stormwater fee, and an average consumption of 4,000 gallons. So their total bill would be $96.47 and rounded that up to a $100 deposit. The Water Advisory Board has seen this presentation, and they unanimously recommended this for your approval. And then this was also approved unanimously during the last council meeting. And this just is a recap of the slide for the proposed deposit amounts.
Tommy, do you have any questions?
I do not, Mayor.
Tom?
Good.
Harry?
I'm good.
Billy? Lane? Lucy?
I just have one. So we're not going to do anything about, like, if they had good credit, that they would not have to pay their $100
We did
deposit?
do some research on that. There was one company that I guess reached out to us, or that we found, and the utility would have to pay for that process. It's something we can still look into, but at this time, if they are an existing customer or they had a previous account with us, we can use that payment history to either waive a deposit. But if they're a new customer, new to San Angelo, they would be required to pay the deposit.
Move to approve is presented.
Second.
All in favor of the proposed changes? Oh, sorry. Public comment?
I would like to know what would be the average balance of this retained money, and what interest rate you'll be gaining, or what do you expect to gain from it as far as income? I'm sure you've thought that through.
Allison, you know the information.
Yes, ma'am. So I guess if I understood his question correctly, we hope to decrease the amount going to collections in the future because we would be receiving a larger payment back to the utility at the time of the closing of their account. So we would receive more revenue at the time of closing their account or at the 4-year mark.
Thank you.
No, I do not have those numbers right now.
We do want to remind, really, this is not a revenue generator for us. This is after the service has already been provided that we're trying to capture, mitigate any losses that we've had in the past. So moving forward in the future, we want to apply services that have already been provided by the city, any monies that have been in deposit toward that to make sure that we don't fall short.
Harry?
Just another comment on that is this will ultimately save the rest of the taxpayers dollars because we're not supplementing some of these people that don't pay their bills.
Correct. Any other public comment? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting these new proposed deposits, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
No nays. Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Allison, we'll now do H, which is the first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Appendix A, Article A8.000, utility-related fees, A8007, water billing charges by amending the late fee.
Hello again. Yes, we are going to discuss the late fee, hopefully, maybe not the last time, but we hope to kind of change it. Since 2005, we have charged $25 a late fee. This item has been discussed before you several times, and I believe councils prior to you have discussed this item several times. We've taken this to the Water Advisory Board, and we are looking at changing it to a percentage-based late fee. And so I'll go through how we've calculated that percentage. I want to briefly go over what our late paying customers look like. We have on average 14,000 customers, 14,500 customers that pay late each year. Of those 14,000, this column will show you approximately 4,000 of those customers pay one late fee each year. And then this category over here, we have on average, this is over the past 4 fiscal years, that we have 611 customers that pay 12 late fees each year. Your background memo said 492, and that was a typo. That's actually the exact number of customers we had in fiscal year 14, but the average over the past 4 fiscal years has been 611. If we decide to go to a percentage-based late fee, we need to know what we'll be charging that percentage to, and so that is the delayed revenue coming in. So once again, these numbers are averages over the past 4 fiscal years. So the delayed revenue on average from those paying one late fee each year is $203,000, whereas those customers that paid 12 late fees a year, that delayed revenue is slightly over $1 million. Is there any questions before I go on this presentation or on this
Then
slide?
your corresponding numbers underneath. So 413 is 3 months.
Those are the customers that pay 3 late fees a year. So the delayed revenue in that category is $413,000. This chart is in $1,000. So for a total of $6.9 million of delayed revenue each year. Okay, so what it looks like on a percentage base and what our revenue would be, we took this to the Water Advisory Board and we tried to get to the 15%, but it just doesn't get there with the revenue that we need. We're proposing 18%. It is slightly less than the amount we have budgeted, but what we want to do is track that number to make sure that over the past 4 fiscal years we still see this same amount of customers that are still paying late fees. And so we want to use this 18% and then just track it for this first year to see how those revenues really come in. And the reason we're trying to go with the 18% is we're trying to lessen the late fee burden on low consumer or low water users. And so as you can see, the 18% would be an average, or the late fee on that customer would be approximately $20. These two average bills up here are the average late paying bill over the past 4 years. So the residential bill is approximately $109 and the commercial is approximately $184. We did do some research and found that 90% of our late paying customers are residential, 10% of those are commercial. So what we're really trying to do is get this category under the $25 mark. I believe that was my last slide. If y'all have any questions, please let me know.
Billy, do you have a question for Allison?
I do not.
Lane, do you? Lucy? Harry?
Just one quick. It appears like if we go with the 18%, once you back up one slide, that's about $250,000 that will be less than the $25 fee that we're presently charging. Is that my understanding?
Yes, this is a conservative amount. This is assuming that every late paying bill was paid the day, essentially it was after it was late, that they didn't get 2 months behind. So there could be an increase in this 18%, and that's what we want to track.
Tom, do you have
I'm good.
And Tommy?
I do not, Mayor.
At that point, do I have a motion? A second. Do I have public comment on this issue? With no Steve? I was sure you'd pop up.
Steve Hampton, I was waiting for others, but I seem to be the only one interested one here. This, like the other, is what happens in a situation where the frozen pipes break and an individual does not catch it? Maybe they're at somewhere else for vacation, and they have a major break, and their bill goes way up, and they're not able to pay it for 3 or 4 months.
We have a policy, someone can actually request consideration for that broken pipe.
Okay, okay. Excellent. Also, what happens in a situation where the whole town is caught off guard for some reason? And
What would that be?
And I really can't think of a situation.
And we can't really talk about it.
Thank you. But it appears to me that maybe a smaller beginning, set it up over a time instead of a major increase in the percentage, would be. There are 600 people over here who, for what reason, are not being able to pay their bill on time. We seem to be still affecting them.
We will always affect them if they don't pay their bills, but I mean, that's just a fact of life. What we're trying to do is diminish the price they have to pay for not paying on time. And at some point in time, if you have over $6,900,000 of late payments, we can't make excuses for everybody. And this approach is an attempt to reduce that burden on the lower income or the lower bills, which might or might not apply to lower income or those people. There are many people who pay their bill not on time that are not in the lower income or the lower bills. Okay. You can't make a policy that addresses everybody 100%.
I agree. And but I was wondering, do we have a history of people who have abused the?
I think we just showed that on that chart.
I mean, are they? But in the industry, in the commercials area, are there people who have abused it?
So it is.
There are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any further public comment? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of passing the new late fee program, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. I would now like to move item E up for conversation, presentation. So, John James, are you here? Item E, second reading of an ordinance for Z17-12, a rezoning from the general commercial, heavy commercial, CG, CH zoning district to the general commercial, CG zoning district on 92.36 acres located between West Loop 306 Frontage Road and Southwest Boulevard, generally known as the Sunset Mall, and certain adjacent properties. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. Most of this you've seen, so some of it I've cut some slides, but also go through fairly quickly, but feel free to stop me and ask questions. You can see the outline of the area affected. That entire area is currently zoned CGCH, General Commercial, Heavy Commercial, and the proposal is to rezone it to General Commercial. The future land use of the area does show commercial, and again, the existing zoning is currently CGCH. I won't go through all of these. We talked about this quite a bit last time. Basically, the recommendation of the Planning Commission to you, as well as the staff recommendation, is to, given the area in the mall is currently exclusively retail, fitting within the general commercial zoning district, we believe the general commercial zoning is appropriate for that area, limiting the types of heavy commercial that could be allowed, or I shouldn't say limiting, it would simply require a conditional use approval for those heavier commercial uses. We did send out our notifications, 8 in favor, 1 in opposition. Again, I won't go through all of these. There were some concerns raised by the malls. It basically came down to some of the uses that they would like to see retained would be required a conditional use approval rather than being allowed by right. Similarly with the lumber yard, if that was to return to a lumber yard, it would actually be allowed, but it would limit the outdoor storage. Again, at that particular location, most of that outdoor storage was under a roof, so the limitation wouldn't necessarily be applicable to that site. again, went through other cities. Most of our peer cities, their mall areas and retail corridors are zoned something similar to our general commercial. In many cases, for example, Abilene and Odessa, they're zoned a more restrictive zoning than even our general commercial is.
Was that zoned when they built the building, or changed after they built the building?
I don't know the specifics of when those were zoned. Typically, I would guess that they were zoned when the mall was built.
So they didn't have to go through a zone request change?
Again, I don't know, but that is likely correct in some of those cases for sure. Again, this does come to you with a staff recommendation of approval, as well as the Planning Commission unanimous recommendation of approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Harry, do you have a question?
I do. I make a comment, I guess. This ordinance was last updated, I think, if memory serves me correctly, about 1999, 98, 99. So the ordinance itself is 18 years old. And I'm wondering, in today's business climate, whether this ordinance really still fits what we're trying to do in this particular community. I would suggest that however this vote goes today, that maybe we revisit and see whether or not we do have the correct ordinances in place for the zoning in not only this particular area, but for all areas of the community, simply because as we look at in today's world, it's different than it was when I worked at the mall 35 years ago. So I think we really need to take a look at that.
Tom, do you have any comment or questions? Here, Tommy.
John, given if you were starting with a clean slate, I don't want to jump to the conclusion. I think I know the answer, but I want to ask the question. Given a clean slate, what would your recommend in the composition of the neighborhood, exactly what it is today? What would your recommendation for zoning be?
It would be the general commercial zoning.
Okay, I assume that. So if in fact we were only going to look at the mall itself and not all these other properties, do we run the danger of possibly then bumping into spot zoning?
No, I don't think so. You mean rezoning the mall but not the surrounding?
Yeah, that yes.
No, really, spot zoning is when an area with a mixture of different types of commercial zoning really doesn't become spot zoning. Spot zoning is more of a situation where one property is zoned, say, commercial, when everything else around it is industrial or everything else around it's residential. Even that can be okay in certain circumstances, but in this area, having a mixture of different types of commercial zoning wouldn't be considered inappropriate.
Okay, and I tell you the concern that I have, because I was not in favor of this last time, and unless I hear something differently today, I'm not going to be in favor of it today either. I'm just wondering if, tagging on to what Harry said, if we don't need to relook at the ordinance just because we heard from the mall manager on the first reading of this, that business is changing and has no doubt changed in the almost 40 years that the mall has been there. So I'm thinking we may need to, and I don't know about across the town, that's not my point, but if we don't need to rethink some things just because of just the way the world has changed, just a comment.
Thank you. Lucy, do you have some comments or questions?
No.
Yep. Lane? And Billy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
John, did I understand you to say that the property where Blue Cross and Blue Shield is, that could be excluded from this rezoning initiative?
Yes, with any rezoning like this, you can rezone everything within the boundary that's proposed or individual properties, so you could leave that one out.
Another question. If the zoning is left where it is right now, general commercial, heavy commercial, what recourse would the city council or the planning commission have if something like an oil field manufacturer or one of the 18-wheel truck manufacturers, tire truck manufacturers, wanted to move in, that would clearly be an exception to the integrity of the neighborhood? What recourse would we have if we left it where it is today?
If it's one of those heavy commercial uses that's allowed by right, then it's allowed with no special approvals needed, and so there would be no recourse at that point. I mean, that's the way zoning works, is if for each zoning district, there's a list of uses that are just simply allowed, and in this case, some of those heavy commercial uses would simply be allowed under this zoning.
Thank you. Well, I was going to say I didn't have any more questions, but what I was going to request your permission to hear from anybody in the audience. If
we will, after we have a motion on the table.
Okay, so we do have to make the motion before you let us hear.
Yes, I know.
Before the motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I want to just add some comments as well, and that is that I truly believe that the mall intends to make the mall a successful piece of property. I can't imagine that the mall owners would choose to allow someone to move in that would anger every single neighbor and every single business to the point other people tried to break their lease. He has to have some credibility and some integrity in order to save the mall himself. And today, malls are suffering. They are grandly challenged in terms of finding people. And we, San Angelo, need a mall. I can't imagine what we would be if we didn't have a mall. So I think that for our purposes today, that we need to make sure that we don't negatively impact a mall and the potential for that mall to be successful. And so I would make a motion that we do not change the existing zoning.
Second.
Any public comment, please?
Can I clarify the motion? The motion is to deny the ordinance on the second reading.
Not change the existing zoning. Steve, would you please come forward and speak to us? How's that knee?
After I get it started, it works pretty well. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for allowing me to speak. My name is Steve Stevens, a longtime resident of San Angelo. I'm here today as a partner of and representing my other partners in the building that is occupied by the Blue Cross Blue Shield building. We own that building and lease it to them. We're very happy with them, and as far as we know, they're happy to be there. We are hopeful and anticipatory that upon the expiration of the existing lease, they will want to renew the lease. We certainly want that to happen. But as prudent property owners, we have to take into account what may occur. And of course, what may occur is that they may decide to not renew that lease, in which case we'd be looking for another tenant. So our concern is that we might be limited in the type of tenant that would be interested in that particular location. Now let me empathize with you for a moment. I can recall very plainly sitting where you all are sitting a few decades ago when I served on the council, and I remember very distinctly that zoning cases were absolutely the worst things to come before the city council. The reality is that in most cases you've got people, well-meaning people who are interested in their own circumstances that are in opposition to some other well-meaning person who has an interest that is opposed to the other. So the net effect is you have to become the judge to determine which person you're going to make happy and which person you're going to make unhappy. And that's not a pleasant thing. I remember driving over this city many times looking at the properties that were coming up for discussion at the next meeting and talking to people and then wrestling with that difficulty. The reality is, though, you're not going to be able to please everybody all the time. It's not unlike dealing with two children that have different points of view, and you've got to make some decision based on what is right and wrong, not favoring one child over the other, but what makes sense, what's good for the family, what's good for the city in this case. It has been said that watching legislation being made is a lot like watching sausage. It's a kind of a messy process, and certainly that's the case when you get into zoning issues. It would be nice and handy and convenient if we could take a 92-acre swath of land and just take one action and take care of it. But perhaps it might be best to consider breaking down that larger acreage and deal with those who, I know there are some residents who adjoin at least a portion of this 92 acres who are opposed to the zoning, and perhaps look at whether or not that particular area that adjoins that residential area may be considered for this particular proposal and leave the rest of it alone. So I would urge you to support the motion to defeat or not accept this change, and appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Steve, we all know who you are, but the machine recording this doesn't, so could you please state your last name as well?
Stevens, S-T-E-P-H-E-N-S.
Thank you. More public comment, please. Steve?
Mayor and council, my name is Steve Eustace, and I'm in the commercial real estate business here in town. And first, I'd just like to say I appreciate each and every one of you, regardless of what your position is, of the interest and studying the sides of this issue. Because like Steve Stevens said, this is a tough issue, and I understand that. I believe at our last meeting, we talked a lot about the prime reason for this is because in the original motion that granted CGCH zoning to owners of C2 properties that were going to lose property rights, it was a grandfathering zoning category, with also the wording that it was the intent to change this to other zoning based on comprehensive land use plans adopted by the city. And I said I didn't remember that kind of discussion. But, so I went to the city clerk's office after the last meeting, and sure enough, that original motion, just as John said, exactly those wordings, and the entire, that was in the entire ordinance that was attached to that two-page. So I wondered where was all the discussion? Where's that in the minutes? So I went back to the previous meeting when it was introduced, and there is no minutes of any of the discussions at all. So I think, well, I don't remember us putting this intent in there, but you know, it's been 17 years ago, and my memory's not all that good. And I would say perhaps both sides at that meeting, being the planning department and the various commercial property owners there, thought, well, at least they've got a stay of some sort for a period of time. But here we are 17 years later debating the same thing, removing some of the rights of use from a very large group of commercial property owners who don't want that to happen. Why, after 17 years, I don't know of any reason that CGCH has been a bad thing, other than, well, that's what we're supposed to do because it was in that original motion. And that original motion said it's the intent. It didn't say you shall, or this is a directive, it was the intent. And you know what that means, I don't know. But let me just say, when a citizen in our country buys real estate, they get a bundle of rights, and it's a big bundle. They can grant easement, air rights, they can lease it. I mean, there's hundreds of uses or rights that people have when they buy real estate. One of those is the rights of use, and those are based on what the zoning is. And when you take away some of those rights from people, our position and many private property rights groups and the National Association of Realtors consider that a government taking, meaning it's without compensation and without eminent domain. Now, there are some very legitimate reasons why sometimes that needs to happen. I won't deny that a bit in the world. But just because it was written as an intent 17 years ago with no other reason whatsoever is not one of those legitimate rights for the government to take away uses that someone had when they acquired the property. I've lived here all my life, and I love showing off this town, and I show it off a lot to out-of-town prospects for commercial real estate. My profession requires of me to protect people's private property rights and protect values. And if I felt that the existence of CGCH zoning in any way was harming our city or hurting property rights, I would not be taking the stand that I'm taking. This has not caused any problems. It's let everybody have what they feel like is theirs to have. And I just think that you're going to open a big can of worms. You know, this is just one area. It isn't going to stop there, folks. And I just think that things are working fine. There's no reason to do this. As far as the mall's concerned, malls and shopping centers have co-tenancy requirements in their leases. They can't just go, I mean, that's not going to happen. Big trucking companies are not going to come over that area of town. It's just not going to happen. It's not economically feasible. The buildings are not set up for that. And there's tons of land at a tenth of the price in other areas where those are the proper things. We talk about Midland, Odessa, and Abilene. I wouldn't feel as excited if I were a commercial broker in any of those cities showing off my town, because this town is better and prettier than any of those. And we're doing just fine, and we're getting along, and let's leave it alone. I ask you to support the mayor's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have any further public comment? Lance?
Esteemed Councilman, Madam Mayor, thank you for allowing me to be here to speak with you today. I'm going to be a little bit redundant in what's already been said. If
Could
you
you
will
please
bear with
state
me.
your name first
Lance
and last?
Lacey. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you for the
Thank you.
cameras.
I'll be a little bit redundant, but I'll try to move through it quickly if that'll satisfy. My prayer this morning when I got up was that I would be a little bit more coherent than what I was last time that I spoke to you, make a little bit more sense. I don't know if that'll get answered or not. I'll let you determine that afterwards. The American experiment, in contrast to other countries, has been successful primarily in our country due to our ability to own property, whether it be private property and or otherwise. Private property is a bundle of rights, as Steve mentioned, and a major twig in that bundle is control. When you remove control of private property, it becomes public property. Today may not be the tipping point, but it certainly moves us closer as we contemplate handing over more and more control to government. Let's make no mistake about it, this matter of removing the zoning classification of CGCH is about transferring control to some extent. So I ask, is it for the common good? The anecdotal evidence would say no. There has been, at least to my knowledge, no abominations from the CGCH zoning. The only reasoning I've heard is to justify the removal of these rights has been what might or might not happen. In my mind, this does not rise to the level that would justify removing someone's rights. In fact, I'd say that what we've learned over the years is that the market dictates and that the basic principles of Economics 101 dealing with supply and demand will typically set the highest and best use of a property. Kmart is one of those examples that comes to my mind off of Southwest Boulevard. It was not a good retail location to the extent that the building was eventually totally removed. Supply and demand especially in this case, took effect, and the highest and best use will now be determined for that piece of property. Sunset Mall is the inside corner of Loop 306, a site that is and will be in high demand due to its location. Due to its demand in the market, the value will likely, well into the future, be much greater than something like warehousing can afford to justify. I believe that we're somewhat fear-mongering to begin to suggest this, and that there are other higher and better uses for that piece of property that will come about. So I close by asking you to consider, has CGCH really been the cause of any real problems? Especially when considering the many years that C2, then becoming CGCH, has been around. Second, are private property rights important? Should worst-case, non-historical scenarios override property rights, especially when ignoring sound economic principles? I hope you will agree that the rationale for removing and limiting property rights for public control should require a high watermark of public need before this becomes the solution. Thank you for allowing me to address you.
Very much. Any further public comment? Not, we will go ahead and take a vote. The motion is to deny the changing of the existing zoning and to keep it at CGCH. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. John, I'm going to go ahead and have you finish your presentations of D1 and 2. So D1 is consider routine planning and development service items. First reading and public hearing of an ordinance for Z17-14, a rezoning from the single-family RS1 and two-family RS2 zoning districts to the neighborhood commercial CN zoning district on .74 acres located at 104, 108, and 112 North Milton Street, and an unaddressed tract generally located north of Pecos Street between North Milton Street and North Van Buren Street.
And we'll be taking 1 and 2 together.
So I'll go ahead and read it as well then. First reading and public hearing of an ordinance for Z17-15, a rezoning from the office commercial CO, general commercial CG, and low-rise multifamily residential RM1 zoning districts to the single-family residential RS1 zoning district on 5.03 acres located at 1901, 1902, and 1906 Colonial Street, and an unaddressed tract of land generally located east of North Bentwood Drive and approximately 100 feet north of the intersection of Pine Valley Street.
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. And just as a reminder, these are items we combined together into the routine items. And to be on the list of routine items, it has to have been recommended by staff, approved unanimously by the Planning Commission, and no registered opposition from anyone within the notification area. This first one is rezoning from single-family residential to neighborhood commercial. This is the location of an existing veterinary clinic. They've come in a couple of times for what's called a expansion of a non-conforming use. It's been a vet clinic, but it's continued to have the single-family residential zoning. Rather than continue to come in for these expansions of non-conforming use, they're simply coming in to rezone it, basically to fix it for good and allow expansion of the vet clinic. Again, there's been no opposition from the surrounding properties, and staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval. The other rezoning item, this is in the Bentwood area. These are properties that in the past had been planned for possible commercial or apartment uses. They've decided to extend the residential development into this area, so it's simply rezoning from general commercial, office commercial, and RM1 to the single-family residential district to accommodate the single-family neighborhood expansion. Again, no opposition registered on this case either. So again, the recommendations comes to you from the Planning Commission unanimously for approval with staff recommendation as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tommy, this is in your district. Would you like to speak towards this?
No, in fact, I would make a motion, Mayor, to approve both D1 and D2.
Second.
All in favor of approving both items, please say aye.
I'm sorry, these do require a public hearing.
Oh, yes, sir. So we have a motion and a second, and now we're open for public comment. Good morning.
Todd Henderson with San Angelo Veterinary Hospital. That's the D1. This hospital has been in continual operation in this area probably for 70 years. I think the main concern would be the compatibility with the neighborhood that we have, and I think we've achieved that the past 20-something years that I've been there. With our hours of operation, no weekends, no boarding, things like that, I think we're more than compatible with the area and have not had any problems with neighbors at any time that I've been there. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Henson?
I live right around the block from him, so I've witnessed all of this and happy to have you in our neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been there a long time, Mayor, because
Yes.
I took, when I was a little kid back in the 50s, I took my dogs there, so it's been there. It's been there at least 70 years.
Yeah,
It's almost an icon of our little neighborhood right there.
And we'd like to stay in the area,
Yeah.
for sure.
With that said, any other public comment? We will take a vote. All in favor of the recommended zone changing, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Passes 7-0. We'll take one last Planning Commission presentation, item B. Consider appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of 2 variances associated with the third replat in Block 2 Sunset Ranch Estates, Section 2. 1, a variance from Chapter 10.111.A.1 to allow Grand Canal Road, a collector street, to maintain 50 feet of right-of-width and low of 60 feet, and 2, a variance from Chapter 10.1 or III or 111.A.2 to allow the Grand Canal Road, a collector street, to maintain 28 feet of paving within a lieu of 50 feet on 3.795 acres, generally located approximately 1,230 feet southwest from the intersection of South U.S. Highway 277 and Grand Canal Road. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is the one that you all had tabled last time, so again, I'll be fairly brief in the presentation. You can see on the map in front of you is the red area is the subject replat. And again, normally with a replat, if you're adjacent to a substandard road, the obligation under the ordinance is to provide the additional right-of-way to become a standard road as well as the additional paving. They are requesting to keep the existing right-of-way and paving rather than have to give more. This is the plat itself, how it will be split up into 3 lots. This is the surrounding area. Again, most of the properties in this area were granted a similar waiver as to what's being requested. This is kind of the, maybe not the last piece of property to come forward with this, but as you all discussed last time, one argument in favor of approving this would be that, we've made the mistakes in the past, and this particular property shouldn't be the only one to have to remedy that. Again, hopefully we will not make these mistakes in new areas in the future, but that's an argument for not requiring it. Now, I will point out that this adjacent property did get the variance for the right-of-way. They were technically obligated to widen the street. That never happened, and over time that there's some question about whether or not they're still obligated to do that, but they did not do it at the time. It was not required by the city staff at the time. So effectively, that entire area within this red you see there has gotten this same variance that's being requested. Having said that, staff does recommend approval or not approval, but denial of the requested appeal and upholding what's required by ordinance. Those variances were denied by the Planning Commission as well, and so this comes to you as an appeal, asking you to overrule the Planning Commission and grant those variances. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
When you say technically they might still be required to do that, can you explain that further?
Yes, normally that obligation when you plat the property is to, again, widen the right-of-way and widen the road. That one adjacent plat, the requirement was held to them to increase the paving width. They did not do that at the time. And if they provided a financial guarantee for that, that has long since expired. And so any ability we have to go back to them and again ask them to widen the road, that would be probably a legal dispute that would have to be resolved at that point.
Tommy, again, it's in your neighborhood, so any comment or question?
Yes, Mayor. I voted last time to, essentially grant, not essentially, but to grant the requested variances. John alluded to a couple of things. First of all, I would say I think the Planning Commission did their job correctly when they denied these. I think they did. I would hope they would keep that in mind to work with our planning department so that we don't get to this situation where we have variances that really should have never been granted initially. So, having said all of that, I would, since this is in my district, I would make a motion that these two variances be granted, essentially overturning the Planning Commission's denial.
Second.
To approve the appeal.
Yes, approve the appeal, correct.
I'll second.
Do I have any public comment?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm the proposed property purchaser.
Would you please state your name again for us,
Lauren Edwards,
please?
sorry. Thank council members that came out and looked at the property because it was tough to look at the maps and determine the problems that are there. So I appreciate the council members taking their time out of their schedule to come out and either meet me there or go look at the property. And also I'd like to say thank you to Jeff Fisher at the planning department, kind of working me through the system. It's kind of a complicated red tape mess to get through all this stuff. So, but he's been really good to work with. So I appreciate y'all looking at it and taking the time, and whatever your decision is, I thank you for it.
Thank you. Any further public comment? We will take a vote. All in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. When there was something in my district, you didn't give me an opportunity to comment on it or make the motion. Since I've been on the council since July 8th, that has been what has been done, that whoever district something, a rezoning issues in, you have allowed them. On the previous three that we looked at, you allowed Tommy, because it was in his district, to have some comments and make the motion. I just wondered why the difference.
There shouldn't be a difference, and next time, please speak up, and we'll make sure you speak first.
Thank you.
I was wondering if we can move item I up next, and we have Chief Carter
We
here.
need to take a break, or do we need to go into executive session now? In 8 minutes. We have 8 minutes to go ahead and continue, okay? So we will go ahead and do I. Let me find my page. I. Second reading, public hearing, and adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration and Personnel, Article 2.08, Classified Service, Section 2.08.017, Bilingual Spanish Certification Pay, to provide bilingual pay to police officers that was lost through the expiration of the meet and confer contract, and expand the pay to all languages. Frank, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council.
Chief Frank Carter, Chief David Howard. We're here to, if you have any questions in reference to the bilingual pay, it's my understanding y'all have all reviewed the PowerPoint during the first reading, so we're here and available for any questions you may have.
Actually, I'd move to approve as presented.
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
One more. Okay, I've been told we have time for one more. Let me find where I'm at on this. So what we'll do is start at regular agenda item A. Consider ratifying COSA DC's resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $40,260 to provide an economic development incentive to Elite Solutions, Inc. for a project related to business enterprises that create or that create or retain primary jobs as authorized by Type B Corporation under Local Government Code, Chapter 501, Subchapter C. Roland?
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Let's see if I can get to, okay. Thank you. So this item, as the caption describes, has to do with a business enterprise. It does seek the ratification by the City Council for a resolution in support of approving a project for Elite Solutions Incorporated. This is a technology contractor that is headquartered and has a corporate office here in San Angelo, Texas. They install cable networks, multimedia systems, cameras. This is what is best known as information and communications technology. What I tend to term, based on what I've seen and analyzed, is the smart cable systems for large venues like convention centers, auditoriums, hospitals, and so forth. This is a company that has 70 to 90% of business that is from outside of San Angelo. They maintain 60 to 70% of their market share in San Angelo. They'll be expanding. They currently have 24 employees, and they want to expand to add an additional 28 employees. In addition to the expansion, they would like to create a I have trouble pronouncing, BIC training center. In essence, this is a trade profession certification. So as part of this project, we're going to have folks in the trade profession that will come into San Angelo and they'll be trained and certified at this facility. So that is sort of an added value or added plus to the project. The project involves a first-year minimum capital investment of $75,000, and as part of that, year one will incentivize a $15,000 grant for that capital investment. In year two, they'll invest another $100,000, so we have a total of $25,000 over the course of 2 years. And that, for year two, will provide an incentive of $10,000. The job creation incentive equates to $500 per job for 28 jobs. That's $14,000 over the course of 4 years. So we took an analysis of a 4-year review. In addition to the proposal, we have a workforce development grant that pays for a certification of the workforce, a minimum of $45 per job for those 28 jobs, and that equals $1,260. Total incentives is $40,260 over the course of 4 years. You may or may not be aware that every existing employer, when they have an existing employees, those primary jobs have an indirect or induced additional jobs. So they maintain currently about 24 jobs. They average about 30, so that creates an inducement of additional 26 jobs. These additional 28 jobs that will be created, they'll create an indirect 24.4 jobs. What that means is an $8.7 million in annual economic output and increases the gross area product of 5.5 million. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. Also, I do have the vice president of the company here with me. He's been waiting patiently, Chris Kinsey, and I'd like for him to come up and introduce himself if it'd be okay with the mayor.
Morning, Mayor, Council. My name is Chris Kinsey. I'm the Vice President of Elite Solutions. We started Elite back in 1995, so we've been here in San Angelo for well over 22 years. As Roland explained, we have about 24 employees. We've experienced significant growth over the last 2 years, and we anticipate quite a bit more growth over the next 4. We're a technology contractor, so if you'll look around the room, you see technology everywhere. That's what we do. And we'd like to expand our facility here. We'd like to add a training facility so that we can manage this growth and help facilitate even more growth. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do you have any issues as it relates to bandwidth or, if you will, pipeline in order to continue to grow and develop?
No, we're very happy. Suddenlink offers very good service where we're at.
Do I have questions from other council members? Lucy?
I just have a question. Where's this located?
We're on Templin Road.
In the heart of District 1.
You're on, man. Any other questions from council members?
Mayor, just a comment. I've known Mr. Kinsey for the better part of the 22 years, and he has run an excellent operation. And, you know, it's what I would call one of those, and we have a lot of them here, no doubt, but one of those little jewels that we don't know much about. Chris pays his people extremely well. Chris provides good benefits to his people. So this is one of those things we need to help folks, good folks like Chris.
There's one more comment that I'd like to make. This training facility, I don't know if we really realize the value. That sort of brings added value for us because it'll bring folks, and there's no other facility like it in the West Texas area. The other facilities are located in Austin, Houston, and Dallas, but we're expecting folks to come in here to train to receive that certification, something like maybe 60 per year or so.
Mm-hmm. What's the certification? Could you talk about that?
Sure. So the program that we're looking at actually offers a credentialing program so that we can certify and credential people to come in and install low voltage systems. And that's the organization is called BICSI. It's the Building Industry Consulting Services International, and they offer a nationwide credentialing program for that.
Billy, did you have a comment or question?
It was answered. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any further questions or comments other than thank you for choosing San Angelo? Thank you for being a part of San Angelo. We're glad to see that you have established a company that has great growth opportunity here.
Mayor, I'd move approval of this resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, public comment. Gotta hold it up. With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Congratulations. Keep growing.
Thanks, Chris.
We're going to knock one more out. Item C, consideration of a resolution by the City of San Angelo, Texas City Council authorizing the city manager or designee to apply for and accept a Texas Historical Commission certified local government program grant for fiscal year 2017 and 18, approving provision for matching funds equal to 50% of the project costs in the form of a combination of matching funds and value of in-kind services, and designating the city manager as the grantee's authorized official. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you may know, we are what's called a certified local government, which is a designation by the Texas Historic Commission as a community that's involved in historic preservation. As part of our renewal of our certification for that, the Texas Historic Commission staff recommended that we apply for this grant that is available this year to, in this case, rewrite our development standards, design standards for the river corridor in downtown and cultural overlay districts. As you know, we currently have development standards for the river corridor and downtown. One of our goals has been to clarify and simplify those design standards to help developers in these areas better understand what it is the city actually wants in terms of historic preservation and preserving the river corridor. And so we are anticipating an application for this grant. The total project would be for $40,000, helping hire a consultant to help us rewrite those design standards. The grant amount is for $20,000. The city's match would be $20,000. $10,000 of that can be in-kind services, so the staff time involved in the project, so it wouldn't actually be cash. And then the remaining $10,000 would be a cash source from the city source. So I have some details on the project timelines, but basically it's about a year-long project if we get the grant. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What are some of the design standards that you're looking at changing?
Well, I think the process, what we want to do is through this process, meet with downtown business owners, downtown San Angelo, other groups to help get feedback on what those are. So we don't want to go in with an idea of what those design standards should be. We want to use a public input process to help determine what the community thinks that those design standards should be.
Are you going to use that book that's about this thick that already defines the design standards for downtown as the basis for this conversation?
Yes. Now, the idea is to take the couple-inch thick manual and reduce it to something more simplified so that both it's easier to implement for staff and easier to understand for business and property owners as they're going through the process.
Because one of the problems we have today is no one's paid attention to that standard document, and so what you have is so many things that have already been approved that would have never been approved in recent years based off of that existing dialogue book. And so I would hope that if we're going to approve this, that we would make sure that the Design and Historic Commission understands that their responsibility is to follow what you are going to create as new design standards, because that has not been so.
And again, those discussions that have led to this point are the reason that we're wanting to go through this process. We're already in the process with them of redefining those boundaries. We're doing that just in-house. But again, simplifying the design standards is something we've heard from people going through these processes, and I think that the Historic Commission would benefit from more simplified standards, helping them to implement them better as well.
Just to add to John's, one of the goals that council gave us was, to look at our zoning ordinances, all those kind of things. We currently don't have the funds. We brought that forward to council to redo the entire zoning ordinance, which is what we recommend because it's old. So what we are doing and what John and his staff has done is look for opportunities where we can take small segments of those things and try to leverage some grant dollars to help pay for it. So your questions are spot on what result are we going to get. But just from the other side of it, what we're really trying to do here is find creative ways to pay for these things and do them in pieces because we can't afford to do the whole thing at once. And this was one area we were getting some concerns about, not only from the downtown area, but the river corridor as a whole. And that, of course, extends farther, and its boundaries are pretty big. So there's some discussions about, well, City Hall is so far away from the river, why are we having to review the sign there, those kind of things. So it's to look at a whole gamut of things, and that's our goal.
Is that inclusive of creating a historic downtown overlay?
Yes, as I mentioned, we're already looking with the DHRC on splitting what is now kind of one big area into a river corridor that's just the properties along the river largely, a separate district for downtown, and then the cultural overlay district, which is the museum area and that. But part of this process would possibly identify different standards, because what we're looking for development along the river should have different standards than things in the historic part of downtown. And so separating those areas is part of the goal of this.
And we'll keep in mind as we go forward with this, you know, this is a dollar amount that we're comfortable with as far as the grant and so forth. We'll have to see how far that will go with the consultants once we get into that process. So that's our hope.
This is something I've been working with John and Rick on since I was elected, because there are so many citizens downtown that when they get ready to redo the inside of their buildings, just really struggle. I have spent an inordinate amount of time visiting with people to try to get them through this process, and hopefully, as you say, Mayor, that particular book sometimes confuses people because it's so thick. Maybe if we can make that so it's easier to understand, then everybody should be able to comply with what we need to have done downtown, and have standards that when you got a historic building in here and a non-historic building sitting side by side, they should still look very similar on the outside. Just because one's a historic building doesn't mean that it should be different than the one next to it, or vice versa.
Well, but there are rules and regulations on historically registered buildings by law. So in one sense, one is legally required to do so, and in one sense it isn't. But we do want continuity in terms of the way it looks.
Thank you.
Do I have further questions or comments of John James from anybody on council?
I would move to approve this as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We'll go into executive session. We are going to take a break and go into executive session. About how much time do we think will be in executive session?
I would think probably an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay. We are adjourned. Oh, I'm going to read, if I find the right page.
Mayor, we're not going to let you go out of town anymore.
I know.
You just forget.
You do, and the age has a part of dealing with that.
No, don't be talking like that.
Okay, so our closed session, executive session under provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meeting, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.0711A, consult with attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation regarding Templeton Construction, Inc. B, Section 551.0712, consult with attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter regarding the West Texas Water Partnership. Section C, Item C, Section 551.072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property related to the Avenue P drainage project. And D, Section 551.0741, to deliberate the annual evaluation of the city manager. With that said, at 10:12, we will now go into executive session. We will call this meeting back to order at 1:13. In executive session, we gave Daniel his annual performance evaluation. He received an overall rating of meets expectations, and with that, he will receive a salary increase of 1.5% effective October 1, 2017. In addition, we have the following items. Tommy?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a purchase and sales agreement for 0.432 acres of the property located at 700 Knickerbocker Road for a price not to exceed $90,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in, any public comment? With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. And Harry, I think you have something.
Right. I'd like to make a motion authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a purchase and sales agreement and related documents for the purchase of approximately 40,000 square feet of a portion of the real property located at 650 Old Knickerbocker Road for a value not to exceed $300,000.
Second.
Is there any public comment? If none, then we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. We now will go to item J, which is consider resolution setting out number of votes to be cast for nominees for Board of Directors of Tom Green County Appraisal District. Brian, you want to give us some direction, please?
There's only one slide, Anthony, if we can. So, as you know, the process is we've got 7 nominees that were given. They're listed on the screen there. We're allocated 1,293 of the total vote, which is 5,000. That's divided among the various taxing entities. So 1,001 would force one of these onto the board. Anything other than that would not guarantee a spot. And as far as that, y'all can, as long as it's by a majority vote of council, you can divide it any way you want to. If you did choose to divide them evenly, it would be 184 votes apiece, with 5 left over. That would be a fractional amount.
Well, we presented a slate of 5 people actually at the past city council member, but meeting. But we also nominated 2, Candy Poole and David Nowen. So I would like to make a recommendation that we give 1,001 votes to Candy Poole.
I'll second that.
Yes, sir.
Is that a motion?
Is that what we need?
Or however you want. Yeah, you still have 292. I was just yeah.
What I'd like to do is make this nomination for the 1,000 votes, and then we'll take a second nomination. Or can we not do that?
Well, we're adopting a resolution, so it really probably needs to be in one motion.
Okay, then I make a motion that we give Candy Poole 1,000 votes and 1,001 votes, and that we give David Nowen 293 votes.
292 votes.
292.
I'll second that.
Do I have public comment on this?
Yes.
Is there any public comment on this? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the 1,001 going to Candy Poole and 292 to David Nowen, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Billy, I know that you're going to have to leave. Is there any one of the last remaining ones that you would rather we pull forward and discuss while you're still here?
No, we can just.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I can find out where we're at. Okay, item F, presentation on the Stormwater Management Program, and Shannon McMillan is going to present that today.
Thanks for having me, and we will make this short and quick. I'm just going to go over 3 big points with the city stormwater program. The stormwater management program benefits, the stormwater highlights for this permit term, and the future of our stormwater management program. Stormwater is definitely an investment in our community. It's good to have aesthetically pleasing things and attributes throughout our community that we all enjoy and that we all love to take part in and that we love to show off, as someone earlier in the council mentioned. Pollution prevention and stormwater program play a pivotal role in that. Our program also does public education and outreach to educate the public, which is part of the reason why I'm required to do this presentation today. Promotion of natural resources and stormwater quality monitoring inspection, that kind of hits on the regulation aspects. The stormwater program benefits go with increased promotion of ecotourism, which brings in people that want to come and tour our city and enjoy our beautiful river and lake. Increased community pride among our residents, and of course the aesthetically pleasing attributes. Decreased overall city pollution, that's the permit, that's the federal and state regulation requirements. Increased water quality, which affects wildlife, human life, plant and aquatic life. We have better drinking water coming in to the plant to be treated if we do the pollution prevention. And finally, to meet state and federal regulation requirements. So our operations and maintenance department plays a pivotal role in a lot of mechanical aspects of pollution prevention. This year alone, we removed 2,979 tons of sediment from the city streets, and that's just via street sweeping. We've also collected 7.2 tons of illegal dumping, and that's usually in our spoil sites, in our city drains, and things like that. That's not including what code compliance does for illegal dumping. And 900 tons of storm debris from our recent terrible storms that knocked out a lot of trees and potentially could have impacted our river quality.
How do we, would you go back to that slide?
Sure.
That illegal dumping of 7.2 tons is a shocking number. What's the program to stop that?
Well, that's going to be addressed in a later slide with the future of our stormwater management program. When this was developed, which was kind of in 2008, and when it really got ramped up was in 2010, the program met the requirements of what the permit was at the time, but now we've kind of gone above and beyond with population and different operator statuses of what we need to do and what we need to take action for, because that is city dollars and essentially taxpayer dollars that are paying towards people that are contributing to that illegal dumping. We'll move on. Okay. So the stormwater highlights for the stormwater engineering side is where myself and Ezra come into play. We do a lot of record keeping to meet TCEQ requirements. Education and outreach, we've done programs for the Air Force Base, for little ones, for adults, all promoting pollution prevention. Private and public sector inspections. So not only are we required to inspect construction activities that are private sector, but also public sector. So any of the city departments that are disturbing soil, we are responsible for ensuring that they stay in compliance with state and federal regulation. And then the stormwater quality monitoring. So after a certain level of rain event, we do samples on the stormwater quality to determine where pollution, triggers are, and to kind of maintain the program. The future of our stormwater management program is, as mentioned, we really need to start addressing ordinance revisions to kind of prepare for being able to have some type of enforcement activity for those that illegal dump. As of right now, we don't really have any teeth in going after someone that say they want to dump 40 gallons of oil into the river. As of right now, we would be responsible for paying for and remediating that because we have nothing in place for an enforcement case. Right now, we can only enforce on construction activities. We want to start a natural resource task force committee because a lot of MS4s, the university has an MS4, the Air Force Base has an MS4, TxDOT and the county all have MS4s that discharge into ours. And so if we can collectively work together on developing a really impactful program, then we can reduce our pollution and stay out of sights of state regulators, as well as have a community where people enjoy going and kayaking down the river. They fish, they can swim, and not fear of what's in the water. And finally, an increased community involvement. This program is direct, and this regulatory requirement is directly impacted by citizens and industry. So if you look at the river, most of the river is stormwater runoff. The cleaner we can get it before it reaches the river, then the better off we all are. And so that takes a whole community approach and community involvement. And then, of course, finally, increased measures for water quality monitoring. Our stations are about 8 to 10 years old. They're kind of exceeding their shelf life, and we're going to try and revisit some new approaches for doing a better job at stormwater quality managing that will be more cost-effective for our program. And if you guys don't have any further questions, I'll...
Does anyone have a question?
What are our efforts on dredging?
Well, they dredged the river, I guess, and that was in 2010, 2012. And I had some stats, that's definitely an option. But the cost of doing that versus mitigating that before it reaches the river are better. If you talk about the cost of having to dewater everything and then dredge all that out and everything like that, where we could prevent that before it ever became an issue, then I think addressing it that way would be best for the city and probably the most cost-effective way. And another part is the bank stabilization that was done back in 2010 played a pivotal role on sediment removal and erosion collecting into the base of and that really did mitigate that. Now, if we could extend that on down throughout the city, that would be wonderful.
I need to get with you. There's a project for the Parkview Lake over off Lindenwood area. They've been looking at some dredging that's been talked about in the past. And if you know, that's where Sol Ross comes down, and that big funnel from the water drainage when we have a big storm comes right into there. So I might need to get with you on that.
And it definitely plays a pivotal role in water quality because you're able to get back some really good oxygenated water in there. And then not only that, the capacity. So you're going to have,
Definitely.
as an adverse or as a good effect, less, more capacity to hold water.
Would anyone else like to speak to the question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the consideration of the possibility of issuing rebates of water fees, which is item L. And Tina, you're on for that. What? No, I want you to do rebates of water fees first because Billy's under a time frame.
Okay.
And I think this is something she'd like to participate in, and then she won't feel like she'll have to stay if she needs to.
All righty. Wait for Anthony to get our slides up here. Okay, so our water ordinance, our water rate ordinance states that biannually in April and November, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, Mr. Valenzuela. Apologize. Biannually in April and November of each year, we bring this item to the City Council for their decision on whether they care to issue a water rebate. If action is taken, then we try to take that action in December and May or as soon thereafter as practical. And then the amounts and the methodology for providing the rebates are determined by the council at this meeting, if they choose to do so. Since inception, we've provided a rebate twice. The times that we provided the rebates were both in 2006, just after this ordinance was adopted. We have not since then issued a water rebate to customers. The first time rebates were granted, the base fees were waived, changed to zero for 2 months. The second time, we transferred the excess fund balance to the capital projects fund to use for capital projects. So right now, our estimated fund balance at 9/30/17 was just over $3.5 million. Our 75-day fund balance goal is $4.7 million, and so staff would recommend no action at this time. I do want to point out that estimated fund balance is our fund balance as of September 30th in the Blue Book, and then we've also taken out the carryovers that council approved in the last meeting, as well as any typical year-end audit adjustments so that we have a better picture of where the water fund balance really stands.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do I have questions from the council? No questions. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Any public comment?
The motion is to not grant
rebate.
rebates.
It doesn't really require an action.
Okay,
Okay.
so
If you're not going to, it can just no action taken on this item.
no action taken, stands as it is. Now we will do the update on sales tax revenue performance, which is item K on the regular agenda.
Hey, so good news is that we're up again for sales tax this month, 7.03% over November of last year, and we're currently over budget for our revenue by $236,000. I do want to point out, though, that if we did project flat for the remaining 10 months of the year, that we would still be short of our budget, so we're still towing the line and being very conservative and careful in how we look at that excess revenue.
Would you, on the next report that you give us on the categories where you show the different categories of sales tax revenue, the retail, yeah,
I think that's what this one is, and
you.
you'd asked for that last
Yes.
time. This was our first stab at it. I wanted to
Good.
see if this was what you were kind of thinking in lines up.
Yes.
Okay. And so you can see here, our retail was 42.5%, being the largest, both November of this year and November of last year. And so I have the actual percentages if you'd like me to go through those, but this kind of shows you a comparison of where we are from one year to the next.
Did hotels fall off the chart?
They are at 0.1%.
So they didn't make the chart.
Right. They're right over here at the very end, just above the seal. But it's 0.1%, so it wasn't large enough
That's what I'm saying. That's
have
what I'm
a
saying.
bar.
You can't,
So,
can't see
yes.
it. So, all right. So that would say restaurant business is down, which is interesting.
Food services went from 12.2% of the total to 12%, so just very slightly.
Manufacturing went way up, which is terrific.
Yes,
That's a
ma'am,
good
from
thing.
3.7 to 5.1%.
And retail is good. Shop local, spend local, support local, give local.
Yes, ma'am.
It makes a difference. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I believe, and you might double check me, but I believe through the confusion of how we handled today's meeting that we've covered every item on the agenda.
You had me on my toes, but I believe so.
I think so. So with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I am so sorry. Before you make that motion, I forgot to do something a little bit earlier. We know that our water director is leaving, water utilities director. Bill Riley's done an incredible job for us. He's had an assistant, Allison Struby. She showed up today with the flu and still did her presentation. As he's leaving, I am going to go ahead and place her as the interim water utilities director until we do get that position hired. I think she's doing a wonderful job for us right now, and I just want to make sure that we do have that in place before he does leave, and I did want to make sure I made that announcement. Okay.
Very good.
And could I also just mention
Yes.
that a reminder to everybody that's watching out there that we're not having our normally scheduled meetings in December. It's going to be the one meeting on December 12th.
Thank you.
Move we adjourn.
With that said, I am adjourning the meeting. Do I need a motion to do that? And a second, please.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Go.
Happy
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanksgiving.
everybody.